If your phone rings at 3:17 a.m., don't answer it. Because once you do, it never stops calling. My name is Daniel Harper. I lived alone in a quiet apartment in Chicago, a small one-bedroom place on the 17th floor with a nice view of the city's skyline, no pets, no roommates, just silence and me. It was the kind of predictable, peaceful existence I craved after everything that had happened. But that peace was shattered one night, and the silence was replaced by something else entirely. It started, as these things often do, in the dead of night. At exactly 3:17 a.m., my phone, resting on the nightstand, lit up the dark room with a cold, sterile light. I squinted at the screen. Unknown number. There was no caller ID, no string of digits, nothing. Just one word, glowing ominously, calling. My first thought was that it was a technical glitch, or maybe a spam call from some overseas call center with a spoofed number. I was groggy, half asleep, and my hand moved on autopilot to silence it. But something made me hesitate, a strange sort of curiosity, a prickle of unease that I couldn't quite place. Against all my better judgment, my thumb swiped across the screen. I put the phone to my ear. I answered. At first, there was nothing but static, a low hiss like an old radio between stations, then, breathing, slow, wet. It sounded like someone struggling to draw air through water-filled lungs. It was a deeply unsettling sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I almost hung up right there, but then a voice whispered through the static, a dry, raspy sound that seemed to crawl right into my ear. It said, "You shouldn't have picked up." I managed a nervous laugh. Who is this? I think you've got the wrong number." I was trying to sound annoyed, but my voice trembled slightly. The line was silent for a beat, and then the voice spoke again, its tone devoid of any emotion. "Daniel Allen Harper." It said my full name, first, middle, last. My blood ran cold. Nobody knew my middle name. I never used it. I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. "How do you know my name?" I stammered. The voice ignored my question. Instead, it said something that ripped the breath from my lungs, something I had buried deep inside me, a secret I had never told a single soul. It whispered, "You still feel guilty about the accident." This is where most people would assume I was dreaming, that this was all some elaborate hallucination brought on by a late-night pizza. But I was wide awake. My heart was hammering against my ribs, and cold sweat was beading on my forehead. After that first call, I tried to rationalize it. A prank, a hacker who'd gotten hold of my personal information. I blocked the unknown number, even though I knew it was a useless gesture. I told myself it was over, but it wasn't. The next night, at precisely 3:17 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, I didn't answer. I just watched it vibrate on the nightstand, the word calling, pulsating like a malevolent heartbeat. It rang for 2 solid minutes before stopping. The relief I felt was short-lived. A moment later, my lights flickered and went out. A second after that, they came back on. The night after, it happened again. 3:17 a.m. the call came. I ignored it. A moment later, my next-door neighbor, a guy I barely knew, slammed his door so hard it shook my walls. The calls kept coming, every single night. Same time. Same chilling silence if I didn't answer, followed by some strange, unsettling event. The voice started predicting things, not through the calls, but through text messages that would appear from the same unknown sender. A text would come through, "Your lights will flicker in 10 seconds, and they would." Another one, "Your heart is about to start racing." And suddenly, I'd be gripped by a panic attack, my heart pounding, as if it wanted to escape my chest. The messages were taunting, toying with me. Each one, whether I answered the call or not, always ended the same way, with a final text that made my skin crawl. "We're getting closer." What happens next still wakes me up in a cold sweat. After 2 weeks of this torment, I was a wreck. I wasn't sleeping. I was paranoid, jumping at every little sound. I finally broke down and went to the police. I know how it sounded. A crazy guy ranting about haunted phone calls. I expected them to laugh me out of the station, but I showed them the call logs, the bizarre texts. I must have looked desperate enough, because a young officer, Officer Miller, agreed to look into it. He took my phone and said he'd have their tech guys trace the number. He told me to go home and try to get some rest. He called me the next afternoon. His voice was different, subdued. He asked me to come back down to the station. When I arrived, he led me into a small, windowless interrogation room. He sat across from me, his face pale, his eyes troubled. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "We traced the number," he said, his voice low. "It's not possible." I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "This number, it was disconnected 10 years ago. It belonged to a man who died, in your apartment building, in your exact apartment." Actually, my throat went dry. He died how? Officer Miller stared at the file in front of him. He died on October 23rd, 10 years ago, at approximately 3:20 a.m. The coroner's report. It just said one thing. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. Cause of death: extreme fear. They found him in his bed, clutching his phone. If you think this is fake, just wait. Knowing the origin of the number didn't stop the calls. It made them worse. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at my phone, waiting. 3:16 turned to 3:17. It began to ring. This time, I felt a strange resolve. I had to face this. I answered. The static hissed, and then the voice came through. But it sounded different, not distant and raspy anymore. It was clear, fuller, and it sounded closer, like it was in the room with me. "I'm not calling you anymore," it whispered. I froze, my entire body rigid with terror. The voice wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from right outside my bedroom. Then it said, "I'm standing outside your bedroom door." My eyes shot to the door, to the brass handle. Slowly, impossibly, the handle began to turn. A soft click echoed in the silent apartment as the latch disengaged. The door began to creak open, revealing nothing but the pitch-black darkness of my living room. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to scream, to do something, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by a fear so absolute it felt like a physical weight pressing down on me. And then, the lights went out. The entire apartment was plunged into total darkness. My phone, still clutched in my trembling hand, suddenly lit up on its own. The screen wasn't showing an incoming call from an unknown number anymore. A new message appeared, the words glowing with a sickening green light. It read, "Incoming call, Daniel Harper," my own name, my own number. But I wasn't calling anyone. My thumb was nowhere near the screen. My gaze lifted from the phone to the dark space in my room, where a mirror hung on the opposite wall, and on the phone's glowing screen, I saw the reflection. I saw myself, standing there, and then I saw something else. A figure, standing directly behind me in the reflection. It had my face, and it was smiling. The police found my apartment empty the next day, alerted by neighbors who heard a single blood-curdling scream. The door was unlocked, the bedroom was a mess, and my phone was on the floor, screen cracked, but still ringing. It went to voicemail, and when the detectives listened to the recording, all they heard was a low, static hiss, and one final, triumphant whisper. "Thank you for answering. Because now, I'm the one making the calls. I just needed a new number, and a new voice. Maybe you'll be the next person I call. So, if your phone rings at 3:17 a.m., just remember my story. You can answer if you want to. I'm waiting. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in your nightmares."